Hello, my name is Hannah Sherebrin. I'm an art therapist and a supervisor, and I've been in practice for over 30 years. And found out that in the therapy sessions, the conflicts are very prominent, and it's important to deal with the conflict before we continue with the therapy, because otherwise we are not going to be able to do some work. So I started with a client that had a conflict, and what we did is I asked him to do the drawing of the conflict. And when he did that, we were looking at the conflict from a phenomenological point of view, and not just from talking about the conflict, because just talking about the conflict is creating a situation where it's repeating the conflict again and again, and we're not getting into any kind of resolution. So when he did that, we looked at the drawing, and the phenomenological way says that we need to look at what is on the paper, not explain or discuss the conflict itself. We looked at the placement of the paint, the lines, the placement of the position of the places of the people on the paper, and so on, so that it really describes something completely different than just the conflict itself. And from that, we could discuss it. Then later on, I proceeded from that gradually to create the paradigm that is existing here and now. So I developed the role choice paradigm by combining theoretical framework of mindfulness and the notion that real choices we are able to do real choices only if we have three possibilities. Because if we use the practices of mindfulness and employing lateral thinking, that brings rather than dichotomous thinking, when we have only a yes-no situation. So if we do that, we can move from rigidity to flexibility in the interpersonal relationship. Well, it was in the 1960s that Edward de Bono coined the term lateral thinking. And with lateral thinking, he decided that the notion of either or is not conducive to solve conflicts, because we cannot really employ either or based action in a conflict resolution, because it is dichotomous. It's an either or, so that it creates a situation where two people are actually pressed to the wall, and so it doesn't leave really any choice. So de Bono calls this a yes-no situation, and it's very difficult to see that two people will have they will be right, really. So that if you have a yes-no situation, then in the conflict, you cannot resolve it, because two people cannot be right at the same time. So he said that he put together a word that's called PO. Now, PO is not really a real word. It just means that you have to introduce another possibility into the conflict, or into the solution, problem solving of the conflict. So the possibility which I introduced leads to flexibility, and it helps both the client and the therapist. In recent years, where more therapists have become acquainted with the benefits of mindfulness. And according to Haas, the contemporary brain imaging studies were able to show that mindfulness practices affect brain plasticity. Haas writes that mindfulness skills permit increased psychological flexibility and adaptability and well-being vital to relationship therapy. So what exactly is mindfulness? And how can we use it in order to show creative thinking to happen? So mindfulness is actually a meditative practice that has come from Buddhism, but gained worldwide popularity as a distinctive method to handle emotions. George Dreyfus, a distinguished scholar of Buddhism, is worried that mindfulness is now becoming merely a therapy, something to employ in therapy, and he's losing the actual active capacity of mindfulness that is central in cognitive processes and not merely in non-judgmental, present-centered form of awareness of one's experiences. The aspect of mindfulness which is useful in the rope choice paradigm is the one described by Goldstein and Kornfield. A quality of attention which notices without choosing, without preference. So when conflicts arise, we have a situation in which two people are engaged in a yes-no situation of thinking. Some of these conflicts are deep-seated, family-based. Some of them are from the occurrences that happen in the community or at work. Some work-based, or some are just triggered by situations that happen and bring back some conflicts from the past, but not necessarily to the person we have the conflict with, that is actually deep-seated and we don't even understand, or we don't even recognize that that's why they are there. When that's happening, the images may create emotional reactions which deepen the feeling of victimization. I mean, we can feel the physiological reactions, and not even realizing that we are becoming angry or becoming saddened or depressed because of a conflict situation. In order to be able to move from an adversarial, a polarized situation to a flexible one that looks at different possibilities, one needs to look at the conflict situation from a different point of view. And mindfulness practices reduce the tension of the situation, and by employing relaxation techniques of breathing and permitting the entry of this to be entered into a state of awareness in which the natural capacity of bringing forth pictures of memories, positive or negative, is employed. It is at this point that I introduce a different object into the picture. Okay, to sum up the first session. In the first session, we saw the importance of having three possible solutions in order to be able to move from, to have choice. In other words, we are moving from dichotomous thinking to lateral thinking, lateral creative thinking. If we see three possibilities, we can see many, many more. Adding some aspects of mindfulness, we reduce the tension in a conflict situation. The state of awareness aids to employ the natural capacity of bringing forth pictures of memories. And in the next session, we will see brain research that supports the paradigm. Thank you for being with us for the first session. Hope to see you in the next one.